I sat in Gerald Fish's office, staring at the cream envelope with my name written in Robert's handwriting. My husband had been dead for exactly 7 days. The lawyer's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. He brought this to me 4 weeks ago. Very specific instructions. You were to receive it 7 days after his passing, not before. My hands shook as I broke the seal. 3 pages. Robert's precise engineer's letters covering every inch. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. 3 weeks ago, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Ethan was in the living room on his phone. He thought I'd gone to bed. He was talking about moving the funds and timing it right and making sure the old man's cognitive decline is documented. The old man. That's how our son referred to me. I stopped breathing, forced myself to keep reading. I hired a private investigator. Claire, I don't know how to tell you this gently. Our children have been stealing from us. Ethan has created shell companies, routing money through offshore accounts. Lily has been forging documents, manipulating my business partners, gathering information. They've been planning this for at least 6 months. They're going to contest my will, claim I had dementia, that I wasn't sound. They're building a case to take everything. $47 million. The letter fell from my hands. I looked up at Gerald. Did you know? Robert told me there were concerns. He said this letter would explain everything. I drove home in a daze. Both of their cars were parked outside. Through the window, I could see Ethan and Lily at the dining room table, papers spread between them, planning. My children, the babies I'd nursed and raised and loved with every cell in my body. When I walked in, they both stood up, concern painted perfectly on their faces. Mom, how did it go? Lily asked, moving toward me. Was it just standard estate stuff? I looked at her, this beautiful woman with my eyes, and saw a complete stranger. Just paperwork, I heard myself say. Nothing complicated. Ethan smiled, relieved. Good. We've been going over some things. There are accounts that need attention, transfers to make. When you're ready, I can help you handle everything. I bet you can, I thought. That night, after they left, I read the rest of Robert's letter. He'd left coordinates for a safe deposit box, evidence, recordings, everything I'd need to destroy them. I still love them, he'd written. Even knowing what they've done, I love them. But love doesn't mean being destroyed by the people you raised. Do what you think is right. Forgive them if you can, but don't let them take everything we built. I went to the bank the next day. Inside that box was a folder thick with proof, bank statements, emails between Ethan and someone discussing cognitive testing results that need to be established, text messages from Lily asking Robert's secretary about his memory problems and confusion, and recordings. I plugged the USB into my phone with shaking hands. Ethan's voice, crystal clear, needs to be ironclad. I'm talking documented incidents, witnesses who'll testify, medical records that show decline. Another voice, doctors who'll backdate records don't come cheap. I don't care what it costs. We're talking $47 million. Dad's losing it anyway. We're just accelerating the inevitable. I pressed pause, sat there in that vault room fighting not to vomit. The next recording was Lily, sweet and persuasive. I just need you to remember, if anyone asks, that Robert seemed confused during that December meeting. Nothing dramatic, just forgetting names, losing his train of thought. Can you do that for me, Sandra? The third recording was both of them together. Ethan, Mom's going to be a problem. Lily, she won't be. She's grief-stricken. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. Ethan, you sure? She's smarter than you think. Lily laughed. Actually laughed. She's drowning. People who are drowning don't ask questions. They just grab whatever lifeline you throw them. I listened to them mock me, mock their father, plan our destruction like it was a business strategy. These were my children. The same children who'd cried at Robert's funeral, who'd hugged me and told me we'd get through this together, who'd brought me coffee every morning and asked how I was holding up. All of it was a performance. All of it was a lie. I called the private investigator Robert had hired. Marcus Reeves met me at a coffee shop in Wicker Park. "How much can we prove in court?" I asked. "The financial fraud is solid. The conspiracy to contest the will is trickier. Illinois is two-party consent for recordings. But I have more evidence I gathered after Robert died. Your daughter has been feeding a journalist at the Tribune a story about Robert's declining mental health, building public sympathy before she contests the will." He slid an email across the table. Lily's words. "My father had been struggling for months. We tried to get him help, but he was stubborn. I'm worried decisions he made toward the end might not reflect his true wishes." "She's creating a narrative," Marcus said. "If this goes to court, she'll already have people on her side. The devoted daughter trying to honor her father's real intentions. What would you do? Protect yourself. You could press criminal charges. They'd both likely face prison. Or you could confront them, show them you know everything, force them to walk away quietly. Prison. My children in prison." I tried to imagine it and felt sick. 3 days later, Ethan called. "Can we come by tonight? There are papers Gerald needs you to sign." I knew Gerald had sent no such papers. This was their move. The trap closing. "Sure," I said. "Come by at 7. They arrived together, professional and prepared. Ethan pulled out documents. "This is straightforward. Power of attorney giving me authorization to manage Dad's business during estate settlement. Gerald said it's a formality." I scanned the papers. The language was designed to confuse, but I caught it. Irrevocable authorization, full discretion over asset distribution. This was them locking down control. "I need my own attorney to review this," I said. The temperature in the room dropped. Ethan's smile tightened. "Mom, Gerald already reviewed it. Then it'll be fine when my attorney reviews it too." They exchanged a look, the first crack in their masks. "Is something wrong?" Ethan asked carefully. "You seem different." "My husband died 3 weeks ago. I'm supposed to seem different." "That's not what I mean. Have you been talking to another lawyer?" My heart pounded. "Should I be?" Lily leaned forward. "We just want to make sure you're okay. That you're not being influenced by anyone who doesn't have your best interests at heart." The audacity of that statement, from the daughter who'd been forging documents, almost made me scream. "I think we're done for tonight," I said, standing. After they left, I called Marcus. "I need you to arrange a meeting, me and them together. I'm going to confront them." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The meeting was scheduled for Monday at Marcus's office. Neutral ground. When I arrived, Ethan and Lily were already there. I set the folder on the desk. "Your father left me a letter. He hired Mr. Reeves to investigate concerns he had about both of you." The color drained from Ethan's face. I opened the folder. "These are transfers to shell companies you created, Ethan. This email is you discussing plans to have your father declared incompetent. These are your text messages, Lily. Manipulating witnesses. I laid out each piece of evidence like cards in a poker game. Your father discovered everything 3 weeks before he died. He didn't confront you because he wanted to protect me." I pulled out the final documents. "Now you have a choice. Sign papers relinquishing all claims to the estate, and I don't press charges. Refuse, and I go to the police this afternoon. You're looking at 5 to 10 years each for fraud and conspiracy." Lily was sobbing. "Please, Mom. We're still your children." I looked at her and felt something inside me die. "No," I said quietly. "My children wouldn't have done this. I don't know who you are." Ethan reached for the pen with shaking hands. He signed. Lily followed, tears dropping onto the paper. "One more thing," I said at the door. "Don't contact me. Don't come to the house. If I see either of you again, I'm going to the police regardless of these papers." I walked out and didn't look back. In the parking garage, I finally broke, sobbed until I couldn't breathe. I'd protected myself. I'd made the choice Robert had given me the power to make, but it still felt like dying. I drove home to an empty house. Everything I'd believed about my family was a lie. My children had tried to destroy me for money. My husband had died knowing his children were monsters, and I was completely, utterly alone. The morning Robert died, I was choosing between 2 throw pillows for the guest bedroom, a cream damask or a pale blue linen. I remember standing in the Crate and Barrel on Michigan Avenue, my phone pressed to my ear, listening to him complain about another steak dinner with the Gordons. His voice had that edge it got when he was tired, when the weight of building Chicago's skyline, one contract at a time, pressed too heavy on his chest. "I'll be home by 10, he'd said. "Save me some of that lemon cake, Claire." He never made it home. The call came at 8:47. Dr. Rahman at Northwestern Memorial, his voice professionally gentle, telling me my husband had collapsed at Gibson's Steakhouse, that they'd done everything they could. That massive myocardial infarction meant his heart had simply stopped wanting to beat. I stood in our kitchen, the one Robert had renovated 2 years ago, with Italian marble countertops and that farmhouse sink I'd always wanted, and watched my reflection fracture in the window glass. The twins arrived within the hour. Ethan came through the door first, his tie loosened, his face pale beneath his Yongjo tan from that February trip to Cabo. He wrapped his arms around me and I felt him shaking. Or maybe that was me. Lily followed moments later, her mascara already streaked, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She smelled like the jasmine perfume I had given her for Christmas. "Mom," she whispered, and that single word carried so much anguish, I thought it might break us both. We held each other in the foyer, while the grandfather clock, Robert's father, had left us ticked away, the seconds of our new reality. I remember thinking this was what family meant, standing together when the floor drops out beneath you, being each other's gravity when the world stops making sense. I was so foolish. The funeral was on a Thursday. February in Chicago has a particular kind of cruelty. The sky the color of old pewter, wind slicing off the lake with enough force to make your bones ache. We buried Robert at Graceland Cemetery, in a plot he'd purchased years ago, joking darkly about planning ahead. The service was enormous. Robert knew everyone, developers, city council members, the guy who has sold him coffee every morning at the Starbucks on Clark Street. They all came. Father Martin from St. Clements presided, even though Robert and I hadn't been regular attendees in years. "We're Christmas and Easter Catholics," Robert used to say with a grin. But Father Martin had known us since the twins were baptized, had been there when Robert's mother passed, had blessed our house when we'd first moved to Lincoln Park. He spoke about Robert's generosity, his dedication to family, his laughter that filled rooms. I sat in the front row between Ethan and Lily, their hands gripping mine so tightly my fingers went numb. I wore the black wool suit Robert had bought me for his company's anniversary gala 3 years ago. It still smelled faintly of his cologne, something woody and expensive that the woman at Nordstrom had insisted was dignified. During the eulogy, Ethan stood and spoke about his father's work ethic, his integrity, his belief that a man's word was his bond. His voice cracked twice. People wept. I watched my son, 6'2", broad-shouldered, every inch his father's physical replica, and felt pride swell in my chest despite the grief. This was Robert's legacy, I thought. These good children, this loving family. Lily read from Ecclesiastes. "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." Her voice was steady, crystalline, the same voice that had sung in the school choir, that had read bedtime stories to children at Lurie's Hospital on Saturday mornings. When she finished, she looked directly at me, and I saw tears pooling in her green eyes. I believed every one of them, The house filled with casseroles and condolences. Robert's business partner, Tom Hendricks, showed up with his wife bearing a lasagna, large enough to feed a battalion. Neighbors brought flowers, roses, lilies, carnations, until our dining room looked like a funeral home. Mrs. Chen from next door, a tiny woman who grew the most spectacular peonies every spring, held my hands and told me in her accented English that time would help, that the pain would become bearable. I nodded and thanked everyone and played the role I'd always played. Claire Pemberton, devoted wife, gracious hostess, woman who kept it together even when falling apart. I made coffee and sliced pound cake and listened to stories about Robert, the time he'd helped finance a community center in Pilsen, the way he'd mentored young architects, how he'd never forgotten a birthday. Ethan and Lily moved through the rooms like professional mourners, accepting embraces, murmuring gratitude, their faces arranged in perfect masks of grief. At one point, I saw them in the kitchen, heads bent together, speaking in low tones. When they noticed me watching, they separated, smiled those matching smiles that had charmed teachers and coaches their entire lives. "Just talking about the estate stuff, Mom," Ethan said smoothly. "Don't worry about any of it. We'll handle everything." I remember feeling grateful, thinking, what would I do without them? The night after the funeral, after everyone left and the house finally fell silent, I sat in Robert's study. He'd designed it himself. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a mahogany desk he'd inherited from his grandfather, windows overlooking our small backyard garden, where snow now buried the dormant rose bushes. His reading glasses still sat on the desk, folded next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. I picked up the glasses and pressed them to my chest and let myself cry the way I hadn't allowed myself to cry in front of anyone. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and animal, that shakes your whole body, that leaves you hollow and gasping. I cried for the man I'd loved since I was 23, who'd proposed to me in Grant Park under a sky full of fireworks, who'd held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies and my mother's long battle with Alzheimer's. I cried for the life we'd built, the inside jokes, the Sunday morning crosswords, the way he'd dance with me in the kitchen when he thought no one was watching. I cried because I knew, somewhere in the part of me that still believed in things beyond this world, that I would never stop missing him. On the bookshelf across from his desk, there was a small statue of St. Joseph that Robert's mother had given him when he'd started his business. It had sat there for 26 years, gathering dust, mostly ignored. That night in the dim lamplight, I found myself staring at it. The painted eyes seemed to hold something. Not judgment, but maybe understanding. The kind of patient knowing that comes from watching people stumble through their suffering. I didn't pray. I hadn't really prayed in years, not since the twins graduated college, and I'd stopped attending those obligatory Sunday masses. But I sat there in the silence, and maybe that was prayer enough. The days after the funeral blurred together. I moved through the house like a ghost haunting her own life. I watered plants. I sorted mail. I ignored the casseroles aging in the refrigerator. Ethan came by every morning before work, bringing coffee from that place Robert loved, sitting with me at the kitchen table while I pretended to eat toast. "You need to keep your strength up, Mom," he'd say, and there was such concern in his voice that I felt guilty for my lack of appetite. Lily called every afternoon, sometimes twice. She worked as a consultant for a nonprofit downtown, something involving fundraising strategies that I'd never quite understood, and she'd carve out time between meetings to check on me. "I'm worried about you," she said on day 5, her voice tinny through the phone. "You sound so far away." "I'm just tired, sweetheart," I told her. "Grief is exhausting." "I know," she said softly. "I miss him so much. Sometimes I forget he's gone, and I think about calling him, and then I remember. We cried together over the phone, and it felt real, and I loved her so much. In that moment, I thought my heart might crack open. On day 6, I finally ventured out. I needed milk and bread, basic things. and I couldn't keep relying on the twins to shop for me. The Jewel Osco on Ashland Avenue was fluorescent bright and overwhelming. I pushed my cart through aisles I'd walked 1,000 times, but everything felt wrong now. The produce looked too colorful, the canned goods too orderly. A woman I vaguely recognized from the neighborhood started to approach me, probably to offer condolences, and I turned down a different aisle to avoid her. I wasn't ready for public grief yet. Wasn't ready for the sympathetic head tilts and the inevitable questions about how I was holding up. How do you answer that honestly? I'm surviving feels too dramatic. I'm fine is an obvious lie, so you just smile and nod and escape as quickly as possible. At the checkout, the teenager scanning my groceries, a girl with purple streaks in her hair and a name tag reading Ashley, looked at me with sudden recognition. "Hey, aren't you Mrs. Pemberton? Ethan's mom?" I blinked. "Yes, I went to school with him. Lincoln Park High. He was like 2 grades ahead of me. She bagged my milk with unnecessary care. I heard about your husband. I'm really sorry." "Thank you," I managed. "Ethan was always super nice to everyone," she continued, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. "Even the underclassmen. That's rare, you know? Most of the popular guys were jerks." I felt that swell of maternal pride again, that certainty that I'd raised good people. I thanked Ashley again and left, carrying that small comfort with me into the gray afternoon. On the 7th day, Gerald Fish called. I was sitting in the sunroom, staring at nothing, a cup of cold tea forgotten in my hands. The phone rang with that aggressive cheerfulness phones have, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. But it might be Lily or Ethan, I thought. It might be important. "Mrs. Pemberton, this is Gerald Fish." Gerald had been Robert's attorney since before the twins were born, a meticulous man in his late 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, who'd handled everything from business contracts to our wills. His voice always had this measured quality, as if he weighed every word before releasing it. "Gerald, hello," I said, trying to inject some life into my voice. "I'm sorry to call so soon after the funeral. I know this is a difficult time." He paused, and in that pause I heard something shift. "But there's a matter that requires your immediate attention. Your husband left a letter with me. Very specific instructions. You need to come to my office today, if possible." My heart did something strange. A stutter. A skip. "A letter?" "Yes, sealed, dated, with explicit directions that you were to receive it 7 days after his passing, not before. He was very clear about that timing." Another pause. "Claire, I think you should come soon. This afternoon, if you can manage it." There was something in his tone that made my stomach tighten. Not quite alarm, but close to it. The gravity you hear when someone's about to change your life and they know it. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. I changed out of the yoga pants and old sweater I'd been living in. I put on jeans and a navy cashmere sweater, ran a brush through my hair, applied enough makeup to look like a functional human being. In the mirror, I looked like a woman preparing for bad news. I didn't know why I thought that. Maybe it was Gerald's tone. Maybe it was the strange specificity. 7 days exactly, not 6, not 8. I drove downtown in Robert's Mercedes, the one he'd insisted on buying 2 years ago, even though I'd argued we didn't need such an expensive car. "Humor me, Claire," he'd said. "I'm allowed one midlife crisis purchase that isn't a motorcycle." The leather still smelled like him. I gripped the steering wheel and tried not to cry. Gerald's office was in one of those historic buildings on LaSalle Street, all marble lobbies and brass elevators, the kind of place where serious money had been moving for 100 years. His receptionist, a kind-faced woman named Margaret, who always remembered to ask about the twins, smiled sadly when I entered. "He's expecting you, Mrs. Pemberton. Go right in." Gerald's office hadn't changed in 2 decades. Dark wood paneling, law books lining the walls, a massive desk that looked like it weighed more than my car. He stood when I entered, gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine, thank you." I sat down, folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. "You said Robert left a letter." Gerald opened a drawer and withdrew a manila envelope. Cream-colored, expensive stationery, sealed with red wax. My name written across the front in Robert's distinctive handwriting. Those precise engineer's letters that never slanted or wavered. "He brought this to me 4 weeks ago," Gerald said quietly. "Made me promise not to open it, not to mention it to anyone, including you, until exactly 7 days after his death. He said," Gerald cleared his throat, "he said you'd need time to grieve, first. Time before you had to deal with what was inside." My hands were trembling when I reached for the envelope. It was heavier than I expected. Gerald slid a letter opener across the desk, but I broke the seal with my thumb, impatient suddenly, or maybe just afraid that if I didn't open it immediately, I'd lose my nerve. 3 pages. Robert's handwriting covered every inch, front and back. No wasted space. I started reading and the floor dropped out of the world. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry. Sorry for leaving you, sorry for what I'm about to tell you. Sorry that I didn't have the courage to tell you while I was alive. But I need you to know the truth. I need you to be protected. 3 weeks ago, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I was in my study, working late, and Ethan was in the living room on his phone. The door was cracked. He thought I'd gone to bed. He was talking to someone about moving the funds and timing it right and making sure the old man's cognitive decline is documented. The old man. That's how he referred to me. My breath stopped. I forced myself to keep reading. I didn't confront him. I should have, but I didn't. Instead, I hired Marcus Reeves. Remember him? Former FBI, the one who helped Tom with that embezzlement case 3 years ago. I had him investigate. "Claire, I don't know how to tell you this gently, so I'll just say it. Our children have been stealing from us. From me. From my business. From the trust funds I set up for our future grandchildren. Ethan has created a network of shell companies, routing money through offshore accounts. Lily has been forging documents, manipulating paperwork, befriending key people in my business to gather information. They've been planning this for at least 6 months, maybe longer. My vision blurred. I had to stop, press my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. Gerald sat perfectly still, watching me with sad eyes that told me he'd already known. Had already read this, or been told, or somehow been part of whatever nightmare this was. They're planning to contest my will. Marcus found emails, text messages, documents that suggest they're going to claim I was suffering from dementia, that I was manipulated, that my decisions weren't sound. They've been building a case, Claire. Our children have been building a case to take everything. I don't understand why. I gave them everything. I paid for their educations, helped Ethan start his investment firm, supported Lily through 3 career changes. I thought we were close. I thought we were a family. But maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe I've been wrong about a lot of things. The letter went on. Details, names, dates, account numbers, Marcus Reeves' contact information. And then, at the end, coordinates and a combination. There's a safe deposit box at First Chicago Bank in Napperville, box 447, combination 143307. Everything Marcus found is there. Every piece of evidence. I've also left a sum of money in an account only you can access. Enough to protect yourself, to hire lawyers, to fight them if you need to. I'm not telling you this for revenge, Claire. I'm telling you this so you can make informed choices, so you're not blindsided, so you can protect yourself. I still love them. Even knowing what they've done, I love them. They're our children. But love doesn't mean being destroyed by the people you raised. Do what you think is right. Trust your instincts, and know that I loved you every single day of our marriage, from that first dance in Grant Park to my last breath. Forgive me for not being braver. Forgive them if you can, but don't let them take everything we built. Forever yours, Robert. I folded the letter with shaking hands. The room tilted. Gerald was speaking. Something about legal options, about protecting the estate, about criminal investigations. But his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Did you know? I heard myself ask. Before today? Robert told me there were concerns about the estate. He didn't share details. He said this letter would explain everything. Gerald leaned forward. Claire, I can recommend several excellent attorneys who specialize in estate fraud. We can pursue... I need to go, I said, standing abruptly. My legs felt unsteady. I need to think. Of course, but please be careful. If what Robert suspected is true. It's true, I said flatly. He wouldn't have written this if it wasn't true. I left the office holding the letter like it might detonate. Margaret tried to say something kind as I passed, but I couldn't hear her. Couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. I drove home on autopilot, muscle memory navigating familiar streets while my brain spun in useless circles. Every memory of the past week replayed through a new, sickening lens. Ethan's concern about estate paperwork, Lily's frequent phone calls, the way they'd handled everything so smoothly, so efficiently, taking charge of arrangements and finances and decisions. I'd thought they were being helpful. I'd thought they were being good children. They were circling like vultures. When I pulled into our driveway, both of their cars were parked on the street. Through the front window, I could see them inside, sitting at the dining room table, papers spread between them, planning, strategizing. For a moment, I sat in the car, staring at my own house like it belonged to someone else. The home Robert and I had bought when I was pregnant with the twins. That we'd renovated and filled with life and laughter and love. The place where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases and graduations. Where we'd fought and made up and built a life together. It all felt like a lie now. I looked down at the letter in my lap, at Robert's careful handwriting, at the coordinates he'd left me. 143307. I didn't know what those numbers meant yet, but I understood what Robert was telling me. I had choices. I had evidence. I had the power to destroy our children if I wanted to. The question was whether I could. I took a breath, folded the letter, and tucked it into my purse. Then I fixed my face into something approximating normal and walked into my house to face the children I no longer knew. They looked up when I entered, matching expressions of concern crossing their faces. "Mom!" Lily stood, coming toward me with her arms outstretched. How did it go? Was it just standard stuff? I let her hug me, felt her arms around me, and tried to reconcile this person, this woman who smelled like jasmine and whose voice carried such warmth, with the person Robert had described. The person who'd been forging documents and planning to rob us blind. Just paperwork, I heard myself say. My voice sounded remarkably steady. You know how lawyers are. Everything takes forever. Ethan smiled, relieved. Well, that's good. Nothing complicated then. Nothing complicated, I echoed, and looked at him. This tall, handsome man who looked so much like his father, and wondered if I'd ever really known him at all. They went back to their papers, back to their planning, and I excused myself to the kitchen, made tea I didn't drink, stared out the window at the snow-covered garden, where I'd taught them to plant seeds when they were small, where we'd had birthday parties and Easter egg hunts and all those moments that are supposed to build a family. That night, after they left, after I'd locked all the doors and checked them twice, I sat in Robert's study again. The small statue of St. Joseph still stood on the bookshelf, patient and silent. I thought about faith, about what my grandmother used to say when I was young, that faith meant trusting there was meaning even in suffering, that grace could be found in the darkest places if you were willing to look for it. I didn't feel graceful. I felt shattered. But I also felt something else stirring, something I hadn't felt since Robert died. Clarity, purpose, the knowledge that I had decisions to make, and that those decisions would define who I was, who I would become after this. I opened my laptop and typed Marcus Reeves's name into the search engine. Then I wrote down the coordinates from Robert's letter. Tomorrow I would drive to Naperville. I would open that safe deposit box. I would look at the evidence. And then I would decide what kind of person I was willing to become. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. February in Chicago, cruel and unforgiving. But inside, in the quiet of my husband's study, I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but determination. Whatever came next, I would face it with open eyes, even if what I saw destroyed me. I drove to Naperville on a Friday morning when I knew both twins would be at work. The sky was that particular shade of winter white that promises snow, but never quite delivers. I took the I-55 south, past the skeletal trees lining the highway, past the sprawl of suburbs that eventually gave way to Naperville's carefully planned downtown with its brick-paved riverwalk and boutique shops. First Chicago Bank sat on a corner lot, an imposing granite building that had probably been there since the 50s. Inside, it smelled like old money and furniture polish. I approached the desk with Robert's letter folded in my purse, my heart hammering so hard I thought the woman behind the counter might hear it. "I need to access a safe deposit box," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "Box 447. My husband left me the combination." She asked for identification, made me sign forms, then led me down a corridor lined with metal doors. The vault room was cold, institutional. She used her key, and I used the combination Robert had given me, 1433-7, and the box slid out with a metallic whisper. "Take your time," the woman said, and left me alone. Inside the box was a thick manila folder, a USB drive, and a smaller envelope with my name on it. I opened the folder first. Marcus Reeves had been thorough. Bank statements showing transfers from Robert's business accounts to shell companies in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. Emails between Ethan and someone named David Kramer, apparently Lily's boyfriend, someone I'd never heard her mention, discussing timelines and cognitive testing results that didn't exist yet but needed to be established. Text messages between Lily and a woman named Sandra Pierce, one of Robert's longtime secretaries, asking subtle questions about Robert's daily routine, his memory, his decision-making. There were photographs. Ethan meeting with a lawyer I didn't recognize outside a coffee shop in Evanston. Lily having lunch with Tom Hendricks's administrative assistant, laughing over wine. The photos were date-stamped, organized by Marcus with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. And then there were the recordings. I plugged the USB drive into my phone with shaking hands. The first file was dated January 28th, 3 weeks before Robert died. Ethan's voice crystal clear. "Needs to be ironclad. We can't have any questions about his mental state. I'm talking documented incidents, witnesses who'll testify, medical records." Another voice, male, older. "That's going to be expensive. Doctors who'll backdate records don't come cheap. I don't care what it costs. This is $47 million we're talking about. Dad's losing it anyway. We're just accelerating the inevitable." I pressed pause, sat there in that cold vault room with my hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. That was my son, my boy who'd cried at his father's funeral, who'd brought me coffee every morning, who'd hugged me and told me we'd get through this together. I forced myself to keep listening. The second recording was Lily, her voice bright and persuasive. "I just need you to remember, if anyone asks, that Robert seemed confused during that meeting in December. Nothing dramatic, just little things, forgetting names, losing his train of thought. Can you do that for me, Sandra? Sandra's uncertain reply. I don't know, Lily. Your father never seemed confused to me. He was sharp as a tack. Please. It would mean so much to us. We're just trying to protect him, you know. Make sure his legacy is preserved properly. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced. I wondered how many other people she'd convinced, how many false witnesses they'd lined up. The third recording was both of them together, somewhere private. A car, maybe, based on the background noise. Ethan. Mom's going to be a problem. Lily. She won't be. She's grief-stricken. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. Ethan. You sure about that? She's smarter than you think. Lily. She's also drowning. People who are drowning don't ask questions. They just grab whatever lifeline you throw them. I listened to them laugh. Actually laugh. And something inside me, something that had been bending under the weight of grief and shock, finally snapped clean through. The smaller envelope contained a handwritten note from Marcus Reeves on his business card. Mrs. Pemberton, I'm sorry. Your husband was a good man. He wanted you protected. If you need anything, call me, day or night. Mr. I sat in that vault for 20 minutes, maybe longer, staring at the evidence of my children's betrayal. The concrete proof that the people I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, were willing to destroy me for money, to paint their father as a senile old man, to manipulate his friends and employees, to steal everything he'd built. And they'd been so convincing, so perfect in their roles. When I finally left the bank, I carried the folder like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I drove home in a daze, barely seeing the road. And when I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car for a long time before going inside. The house was empty, silent. I walked through rooms filled with family photographs, birthday parties, graduations, holidays. Ethan and Lily at 5 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, dressed as angels for the Christmas pageant at St. Clement's. At 10, building a snowman in the backyard. At 16, in matching caps and gowns. At 25, successful and beautiful, and apparently soulless. I stopped in front of a photograph from Lily's 21st birthday. We'd taken her to Alinea, Chicago's best restaurant, and she'd cried when Robert gave her the pearl necklace that had belonged to his mother. I'll treasure this forever, Daddy, she'd said, and kissed his cheek. Had she been lying then too? Or had something changed? When had my children become strangers? I couldn't reconcile it. Couldn't make the smiling faces in these photographs align with the voices on those recordings. Cold and calculating and cruel. That weekend, I played my part. Ethan came by on Saturday with bagels and cream cheese, chattering about some investment opportunity, asking if I'd looked at the estate documents yet. Gerald's office sent over some papers, I said carefully. I haven't had the energy to read through them. That's okay, Mom. No rush. He smiled that warm smile. I can help you when you're ready. I've been looking over Dad's accounts, and there are some things that need attention. Transfers to make, accounts to consolidate, standard stuff, but it needs to be done soon. I'll bet it does, I thought, but I just nodded and sipped my coffee. Lily stopped by Sunday afternoon with a potted orchid. For some life in the house, she said, setting it on the kitchen windowsill. She stayed for an hour, talking about her work, about a fundraiser gala she was organizing, about how we should plan a trip somewhere warm once I was feeling up to it. Maybe Mexico, she suggested. Or California, somewhere with sun. You need to get out of Chicago for a while. That sounds nice, I said, and watched her carefully, looking for cracks in the mask, for some hint of the person on those recordings. But there was nothing. She was perfect, concerned, loving. She hugged me before she left. I love you, Mom. We're going to get through this. I love you too, I said, and meant it, which made everything worse. On Monday, I called Marcus Reeves. He agreed to meet me at a Starbucks in Wicker Park. far enough from Lincoln Park that we wouldn't run into anyone I knew. He was exactly what I'd expected. Late 50s, gray hair cut military short, eyes that missed nothing. He wore a simple suit and carried himself like someone who'd spent years observing people at their worst. "Mrs. Pemberton." He shook my hand firmly. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." We sat in a corner booth. I'd brought the folder, though he clearly knew everything that was in it. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea I wouldn't drink. "How much of it can we prove in court?" I asked, cutting straight to it. I was done with preamble. Marcus pulled out a small notebook. "Most of it. The financial fraud is documented. The shell companies, the transfers. That's ironclad. The conspiracy to contest the will is trickier. We have recordings, but Illinois is a two-party consent state. They wouldn't be admissible in court. So the recordings are useless? Not useless. They show intent. They support the financial evidence. But you're right. We can't use them as primary evidence." He paused. "However, I have more. Things I gathered after Robert passed. Things I didn't include in that folder because he died before I could brief him." My stomach tightened. "What things?" "Your daughter has been in contact with a journalist, someone from the Tribune. She's been feeding him a story about your husband's declining mental health, positioning herself as the concerned daughter, trying to protect the family business." Marcus slid a printed email across the table. "This is from 4 days ago." I read it. Lily's words so careful and sad. My father had been struggling for months. We tried to get him help, but he was stubborn. I'm worried that decisions he made toward the end might not reflect his true wishes. "She's building a public narrative," Marcus said quietly. "If this goes to court, she'll already have sympathy on her side. The devoted daughter, trying to honor her father's real intentions." I felt sick. "And Ethan? He's been liquidating assets. Slowly, carefully, moving money through his investment firm in ways that look legitimate on the surface, but are structured to hide the origin. He's good, Mrs. Pemberton, very good. If Robert hadn't caught that one conversation, we might never have known until it was too late." I stared at my untouched tea. "What would you do if they were your children?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I'd protect myself, but you're not asking what I'd do. You're asking what you should do, and that's different." "What do you mean?" "I've worked a lot of cases like this. Family betrayals, inheritance fights. I've seen people destroy each other over money." He leaned forward. "But I've also seen people choose differently. Choose to draw lines without burning down everything around them. You have options, Mrs. Pemberton. You don't have to go nuclear." "They were planning to declare Robert incompetent, to steal everything he built." "Yes, and if you take this to the police, to the prosecutors, they'll both likely face criminal charges. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly more. They could go to prison." The weight of that landed on me like a physical blow. Prison. My children in prison. I imagined Lily in an orange jumpsuit, Ethan behind bars. I imagined being the mother who sent her own children to jail. "Or?" I asked, because I heard the alternative in his voice. "Or you confront them. Show them you know. Let them understand that you hold all the cards, and that their only option is to walk away quietly. They sign away any claim to the estate. You don't press charges. Everyone moves on with their lives. That's it. They just get away with it. They don't get away with anything. They lose everything they tried to gain. They lose you. They lose their father's legacy. They lose whatever relationship you had." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Sometimes the punishment that hurts most isn't prison, Mrs. Pemberton. It's knowing you destroyed something you can never get back." I spent the next 3 days wrestling with it. I barely slept. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Criminal charges, confrontation, cutting them off completely, trying to find some path to forgiveness that didn't mean letting them destroy me. On Thursday, Ethan called. "Hey, Mom. Can we come by tonight? There are some papers Gerald needs you to sign. Estate stuff. It'll only take a few minutes." My pulse quickened. "What kind of papers?" "Just authorizations for me to act on behalf of the estate. Makes everything easier. Gerald said it's standard." Gerald had said no such thing. I'd called him Tuesday to ask if he'd sent any papers requiring immediate signatures. He'd been confused by the question. "Sure," I told Ethan. "Come by around 7. After I hung up, I called Marcus. "They're coming tonight. They're going to try to get me to sign something." "Don't sign anything. Don't even look at it. Just tell them you need to have your own attorney review it first. And then you decide, Mrs. Pemberton. Tonight or tomorrow or next week. But you decide on your terms, not theirs." They arrived together at 7, both dressed professionally. Carrying briefcases like this was a business meeting. Lily kissed my cheek. Ethan hugged me. They settled at the dining room table, the same table where we'd had 1,000 family dinners, where I'd helped them with homework and played board games and celebrated milestones. Ethan pulled out a sheaf of papers. "Okay, so this is straightforward. It's a power of attorney document giving me authorization to manage Dad's business affairs during the estate settlement. Gerald said it's really just a formality, but it needs your signature." I took the papers, scanned them. The language was dense, deliberately confusing, but I caught key phrases. Irrevocable authorization, full discretion over asset distribution, limited oversight. This wasn't a formality. This was them trying to lock down control before I could stop them. I set the papers down. "I need to have my own attorney look at this." Ethan's smile tightened. "Mom, Gerald already reviewed it. It's fine. Then it'll be fine when my attorney reviews it too." Lily leaned forward. "Mom, we're just trying to help. This is complicated and we don't want you to have to deal with it while you're grieving. I appreciate that, but I'm not signing anything without having it reviewed." The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. I watched them exchange a look, quick, loaded with meaning. The first crack in their masks. "Is something wrong?" Ethan asked carefully. "You seem different. My husband died 3 weeks ago. I'm supposed to seem different. That's not what I mean." He studied me. "Have you been talking to someone? Another lawyer, maybe?" My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. Should I be? Another look between them. Lily's smile was strained now. "Of course not. We just want to make sure you're okay. That you're not being influenced by anyone who doesn't have your best interests at heart." The audacity of that statement, from the daughter who'd been forging documents and manipulating witnesses, nearly made me laugh, nearly made me scream. Instead, I stood up. "I think we're done for tonight. I'll have the papers reviewed, and we can talk after." They didn't move for a moment. Then Ethan carefully gathered the documents, slid them back into his briefcase. "Sure, of course. Take your time." But his voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something harder. He knew something was wrong. They both did. At the door, Lily turned back. "Mom, we love you. We're on your side. Please remember that." I looked at her, this beautiful young woman with my eyes and Robert's determination, and felt my heart crack open one more time. "I'll remember," I said. After they left, I locked the door and leaned against it, trembling. I'd crossed a line tonight. They knew I was suspicious. They'd be more careful now, more strategic, or more aggressive. I didn't know which scared me more. I walked to Robert's study. The small statue of St. Joseph still stood on the shelf, patient and unchanging. I thought about what Father Martin had said at the funeral, about grace and forgiveness. I thought about my grandmother's voice from childhood. "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people hurt you, Claire. It means releasing the poison before it kills you." But how do you forgive people who are still trying to destroy you? How do you release poison that's living in your house, sitting at your table calling you Mom? I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus. "I need you to arrange a meeting," I said when he answered. "Me and them together, somewhere neutral. I'm going to confront them." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Marcus arranged for us to meet at his office on Monday afternoon. Neutral ground. He told Ethan and Lily it was about irregularities in the estate that need clarification. Formal enough to sound serious, but vague enough not to trigger alarm. I spent the weekend preparing. I printed copies of the bank statements, the emails, transcripts of the recordings. I practiced what I'd say, how I'd hold myself together. I called Gerald and told him what I was planning. He offered to come with me, but I said no. This needed to be just us, just the family we'd pretended to be. Sunday night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed remembering them as babies. Ethan had been born first, screaming and red-faced, stubborn from his first breath. Lily had followed 6 minutes later, quiet and watchful. I remembered nursing them, one in each arm. Remembered their first words, first steps. Remembered being so overwhelmed with love I thought I might die from it. Where had those babies gone? When had they been replaced by these strangers who spoke with my children's voices, but had hearts I didn't recognize? Around 3 a.m, I got up and went to their old bedroom. We'd kept it largely the same after they moved out. Twin beds with the quilts I'd made, shelves still holding their childhood books and trophies. I sat on Lily's bed and picked up a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, the one I'd read to her 1,000 times. I opened it and found an inscription on the inside cover in my own handwriting. For Lily, who is brave enough to sail away and wise enough to come home. Love, Mom. I closed the book and cried. Monday arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, pearl earrings, Robert's favorite scarf, armor masquerading as clothing. I drove to Marcus's office building in the Loop, parked in the garage, sat in my car for 10 minutes gathering courage. His office was smaller than Gerald's, but just as professional. Windows overlooking State Street, modern furniture, walls lined with certificates and commendations. Ethan and Lily were already there when I arrived, sitting in chairs across from Marcus's desk. They both stood when I entered. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. "What's going on?" Marcus gestured for everyone to sit. I chose a chair slightly apart from theirs, positioning myself so I could see both their faces. "Thank you for coming," I said, and was proud of how steady my voice sounded. "We need to talk about your father's estate, about some things I've discovered." Lily leaned forward. "Discovered? What do you mean?" I pulled the folder from my bag, set it on Marcus's desk. "Your father left me a letter. He hired Mr. Reeves to investigate some concerns he had. Concerns about both of you." The room went very still. I watched the color drain from Ethan's face, watched Lily's hands clench in her lap. "I don't understand," Lily said, but her voice had gone thin. "I think you do." I opened the folder, pulled out the first bank statement. "These are transfers from your father's business accounts to shell companies you created, Ethan. This email is you discussing plans to have your father declared incompetent. These text messages are you, Lily, manipulating Sandra Pierce into providing false testimony about your father's mental state." I laid each piece of evidence on the desk like cards in a poker game. With each one, I watched them shrink. "Mom," Ethan started. "Let me finish." My voice was steel now, cold and hard. "Your father discovered what you were doing 3 weeks before he died. He didn't confront you because he wanted to protect me. He wanted me to have all the information, all the evidence, all the power to make my own decisions about what to do." Ethan's jaw was tight. "You don't understand. Dad was losing it. We were trying to—" "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't you dare try to gaslight me. I have recordings of you laughing about how easy I'd be to manipulate. I have emails about forging medical records. I have documentation of every dollar you stole." Lily was crying now, but I didn't know if the tears were real or just another performance. We were scared. Dad was making bad decisions. We were trying to protect the family. You were trying to steal $47 million. The number hung in the air between us. And you almost succeeded, I continued. You played your parts beautifully. The concerned children, devastated by their father's death, supportive of their grieving mother. You were so convincing. I believed every word. Ethan's face had gone hard. What are you going to do? This was the moment. The decision I'd been wrestling with for 2 weeks. I could take these documents to the police, press charges, watch my children be arrested, prosecuted, imprisoned, get justice in the way the law defined it. Or I could choose something else. I thought about Robert's letter, about his final words, "Forgive them if you can." I thought about my grandmother's voice, "Release the poison before it kills you." I thought about all those photographs in my house, all those memories that couldn't be erased no matter how much current betrayal tried to overshadow them. And I thought about the small statue of Saint Joseph in Robert's study, those painted eyes that seemed to hold some understanding I was only beginning to grasp. That forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. That mercy doesn't mean no consequences. That you can love people and still protect yourself from them. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice quiet but absolute. You're both going to sign documents relinquishing any claim to your father's estate. Every penny goes to a trust I control. You walk away with nothing. You can't, Ethan started. I can. I have enough evidence to have you both charged with fraud, conspiracy, forgery. Mr. Reeves estimates you're looking at 5 to 10 years each, minimum. But I'm offering you a choice. Sign the papers, walk away, and I don't press charges. Refuse, and I go to the police this afternoon. Lily was sobbing openly now. Please, Mom, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your children. I looked at her, and something inside me, something that had been holding on desperately to the image of who they used to be, finally let go. No, I said softly. My children wouldn't have done this. I don't know who you are. The words hung there, final and devastating. Marcus pulled 2 documents from his desk drawer. These are the disclaimers. Sign them, and this is over. Don't. And Mrs. Pemberton proceeds with criminal charges. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ethan reached for a pen, his hand shaking. He signed. Lily followed, tears dripping onto the paper. When it was done, Marcus notarized the documents, made copies. I stood up, gathering my things. One more thing, I said at the door. Don't contact me. Don't come to the house. Don't call. If I see either of you again, I'm going to the police regardless of these papers. Do you understand? They both nodded, hollow-eyed and broken. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. In the parking garage, sitting in Robert's Mercedes, I finally let myself break. I sobbed until my throat was raw, until I couldn't breathe, until the grief and betrayal and relief all tangled together into something I couldn't name. I'd protected myself. I'd made the choice Robert had given me the power to make. I'd shown mercy, even though they'd shown me none. But it still felt like dying. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. You did the right thing. Call if you need anything. I didn't know if it was the right thing. I only knew it was the thing I could live with. The thing that would let me sleep at night, eventually. The thing that honored Robert's love and my own broken heart in equal measure. I drove home through afternoon traffic, and when I got there, the house was empty and quiet. I walked through each room, seeing it differently now. Not haunted by betrayal anymore, but simply mine. My space, my life, my future to build however I chose. In Robert's study, I stood in front of the St. Joseph statue for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I knelt down, right there on the hardwood floor, and I prayed. Not for my children, though I knew I should. Not for Robert, Though I missed him with every breath, I prayed for myself, for the strength to forgive, eventually, for the wisdom to know the difference between mercy and self-destruction, for the grace to rebuild a life from the wreckage of everything I'd thought I knew. And when I was done, I stood up, and I felt something shift. Not healing. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. The first fragile step toward whatever came next. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, silent, covering everything in white. The first week after the confrontation, I existed in a strange limbo. The house felt different. Not haunted anymore, but profoundly empty. I'd spent 26 years filling these rooms with family, with noise and life, and the assumption that love was enough to hold everything together. Now the silence pressed against me like a physical weight. I didn't leave except for necessities, groceries, the bank to finalize estate transfers, a meeting with Gerald to ensure the legal documents were properly filed. People at the grocery store still offered condolences about Robert, not knowing that I was mourning 2 additional deaths now. Deaths without funerals, without caskets, without any socially acceptable way to grieve. How do you tell someone that your children are alive but dead to you? That you chose to cut them out like a cancer before they could metastasize further? That you're relieved and devastated in equal measure? You don't. You just smile and say thank you and move through your days like a ghost. On the 8th day, I woke up and couldn't remember what day it was. Couldn't remember if I'd eaten the day before. I sat at the kitchen table in my bathrobe, staring at nothing, and realized I was sliding into something dark and deep. Depression, maybe. Or just the natural consequence of having your entire understanding of reality shattered. I thought about calling someone. A therapist. A friend. Father Martin, even, though I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. But what would I say? How do you explain this kind of betrayal to someone who hasn't lived it? Instead, I called Marcus Reeves. "Mrs. Pemberton," he answered on the second ring. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I said honestly. I thought I'd feel better, having made the decision, having it done. But I just feel empty. That's normal. You're grieving multiple losses simultaneously. It takes time. How much time? He was quiet for a moment. I can't answer that, but I can tell you that it does get easier. Not easy, but easier. Did they try to contact you? To contest the documents? No. They signed, they're bound. My guess is they're smart enough to know when they've lost. I wondered where they were, what they were doing, if they felt any remorse or just anger at being caught. I wondered if they ever thought about me, about what they'd done to me, or if I was just an obstacle they'd failed to overcome. "Mrs. Pemberton, you still there?" "Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Marcus, for everything." After I hung up, I sat with the phone in my hands for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't allowed myself to do since the confrontation. I went upstairs to the twins' old bedroom. It looked exactly the same. The quilts I'd made, the books, the trophies from soccer and debate team. A corkboard still held photos, them at prom, at college graduation, at family vacations to Door County and Mackinac Island. Smiling, happy, whole. I took down every photo, every single one, put them in a box in the back of the closet where I wouldn't have to see them. Then I stripped the beds, packed away the quilts, boxed up the books and trophies. It took me 3 hours. When I was done, the room was bare. Just empty beds and empty shelves and all that space where memories used to live. I stood in the doorway and looked at what I'd created. A blank slate. A room that could be anything now. A guest room, an office. A space that wasn't haunted by the ghosts of who my children used to be. It felt like progress. Small, painful, but progress nonetheless. 2 weeks after the confrontation, spring started showing its first tentative signs. The snow melted. Crocuses pushed through the dead leaves in the garden. The light shifted, losing that harsh winter quality, becoming something gentler. I started leaving the house more, started taking walks along the lakefront, watching the water shift from gray to something approaching blue, started going to the coffee shop on Armitage, the one where Robert used to get his morning espresso. The barista recognized me, offered condolences, and I let her. Let people see me as the grieving widow because it was easier than explaining I was grieving so much more than a husband. One morning I found myself standing outside St. Clement's. I hadn't been inside since the funeral, hadn't planned to return, but my feet carried me up those stone steps, through the heavy wooden doors, into the quiet sanctuary that smelled like incense and old books and hundreds of years of prayers. It was empty. Mid-morning on a Thursday. No mass scheduled. Just me and the rows of pews, and the light filtering through stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across the floor. I sat in the back, in the same pew where I'd sat when the twins were baptized. I could almost see them. Tiny bundles in white christening gowns. Robert beside me with his hand on my shoulder. Both of us so young and so certain we knew what we were doing. Father Martin appeared from the sacristy, moving slowly, carrying what looked like fresh candles. He was in his 70s now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp. He noticed me and paused. "Claire, I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to be here," I admitted. He set down the candles and slid into the pew beside me. Didn't ask how I was doing, didn't offer platitudes. Just sat there, comfortable with silence the way old priests are. Finally, I said, "I don't know if I believe anymore in any of this." "That's all right. The church will still be here when you figure it out. How do you forgive people who aren't sorry? Who'd do it again if they could?" Father Martin was quiet for a long moment. "You don't forgive for them, Claire. You forgive for yourself, so the anger doesn't poison you, so you can move forward. But what if forgiveness feels like letting them win? Forgiveness isn't about winning or losing. It's about releasing yourself from the story, from being defined by what they did to you." He looked at me with those sharp old eyes. "You can forgive someone and still never speak to them again. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." I felt something loosen in my chest. "I don't know how." "You start by acknowledging that you're angry, that you're hurt, that what happened was wrong. You don't minimize it, don't excuse it, but you also don't let it be the only story you tell yourself about who you are. Who am I then? That's what you get to decide now." I sat with that. The possibility that I could be someone other than the grieving widow, the betrayed mother, the woman whose family imploded, that I could choose who to become next. "I keep thinking about when they were little," I said quietly. "Ethan used to have nightmares, and I'd sit with him until he fell back asleep. Lily would make me construction paper cards for every holiday, even the made-up ones. They were good kids, Father. I didn't imagine that. I'm sure you didn't. People are complicated, Claire. They can be good and make terrible choices. One doesn't negate the other. So what do I do with all the good memories? Keep them. They're yours. They're part of your story, part of who you are. What your children did doesn't erase who they were when they were young. It just means they became people you didn't raise them to be." That made me cry. Actually cry, right there in the church, ugly and messy and cathartic. Father Martin didn't try to stop me, didn't offer tissues or comfort, just sat beside me while I cried for the children I'd lost, the husband I'd buried, the life I'd thought I had. When I finally stopped, wrung out and exhausted, he said, "You're stronger than you think, Claire. Stronger than most people I know. You'll survive this." "I don't want to just survive. I'm tired of just surviving." "Then what do you want?" I didn't have an answer for that yet, but the question itself felt important, like a doorway opening onto something I couldn't quite see yet. A month after the confrontation, Gerald called with news. "The estate is settled. Everything's transferred to the trust as specified. You have full control. $47 million. Robert's life's work, now entirely in my hands. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was what Ethan and Lily had wanted so desperately. And now, I had it all. Thank you, Gerald. What will you do with it? I'd been thinking about that. About what Robert would have wanted. About what I wanted. About how money could be a burden or a tool, depending on how you used it. I'm going to set up a foundation, I said, in Robert's name, for young people aging out of foster care, trying to start businesses or go to college, kids who don't have families to support them. Gerald was quiet for a moment. That's a beautiful idea, Claire. Robert believed in giving people chances, in investing in potential. I looked out the window at the spring garden coming back to life. I want to keep doing that, in a way that matters. Over the next weeks, I threw myself into the foundation work. Hired lawyers to set up the structure. Met with social workers and nonprofit directors to understand the real needs. Created scholarship programs and small business grants and mentorship opportunities. It felt good to be building something. To take the wreckage of what Ethan and Lily had tried to destroy and transform it into something that would help people. To give Robert's legacy a meaning beyond the money itself. I worked 12-hour days, lost myself in spreadsheets and grant applications and site visits. It was easier than sitting alone in that empty house, easier than thinking about the daughter who hadn't called in 6 weeks, or the son who disappeared completely. But sometimes late at night, I'd wonder where they were, if they were okay, if they ever thought about what they'd lost, what they'd destroyed for money they never got. I'd wonder if I should have handled it differently, if there was some other path I could have taken that would have saved them, saved us, saved the family we'd been. But then I'd remember those recordings, the cold calculation in their voices, the way they'd laughed about manipulating me, and I'd know that I'd made the only choice I could live with. Spring gave way to early summer. The garden exploded with color. Roses and peonies and the irises Robert had planted years ago. I hired a gardener to help maintain it. A quiet man named Jose, who didn't ask questions and seemed to understand that sometimes people needed physical work to process grief. I'd spend hours out there, digging in the dirt, planting new flowers, pulling weeds. My hands got calloused, my skin tanned. Something about the physical labor, the tangible results, helped ground me. One Saturday in June, I was planting hydrangeas along the back fence when I heard the gate creak open. I turned, half expecting Jose, but it was Mrs. Chen from next door, carrying a tray with 2 glasses of lemonade. "You work too hard," she said in her accented English, setting the tray on the patio table. "Come, sit." I wiped my hands on my jeans and joined her. The lemonade was perfect, tart and cold, and exactly what I needed. "Your garden looks beautiful," Mrs. Chen said. "Robert would be happy. Thank you." She was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "I notice your children don't visit anymore." My chest tightened. "No, they don't. Sometimes family is complicated." She looked at her own hands, worn and wrinkled. "I came to America 40 years ago. Left my family in Taiwan. My mother said terrible things when I left. Said I was betraying her, betraying our ancestors. I didn't speak to her for 5 years. What happened? She got sick. My sister called, told me I needed to come home. So I went." Mrs. Chen sipped her lemonade. "My mother and we talked. She apologized for some things. I apologized for some things. Not everything got fixed, but enough. Enough that when she died, I had no regrets. Do you think everyone deserves that chance? To reconcile? No. Some people, they don't change. Some people, they hurt you on purpose and would do it again." She looked at me directly. "Only you know which kind your children are. But I think maybe you already know." I did know. That was the terrible truth of it. I knew that Ethan and Lily weren't sorry. That they hadn't called because they were angry they got caught, not because they regretted what they'd done. That if I gave them another chance, they'd find another way to take what they wanted. "Thank you for the lemonade," I said softly. Mrs. Chen patted my hand. "You're stronger than you think. I see it. You'll be okay." After she left, I sat in the garden for a long time, listening to birds and watching clouds drift across the sky. I thought about forgiveness and reconciliation and the difference between the two. About how you can release anger without rebuilding bridges. About how some relationships, once broken, can't be repaired. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just the truth you have to live with. In July, the foundation officially launched. We held a small event at a gallery in River North, invited donors and nonprofit partners and several of the first scholarship recipients. I wore a navy dress and Robert's mother's pearls and stood in front of a room full of people and talked about second chances and believing in potential. My husband believed that everyone deserves an opportunity, I said, my voice steady, that with the right support, people can build extraordinary lives. This foundation is his legacy. It's about investing in futures, in dreams, in the possibility that we can all become more than our circumstances. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 22, dark-skinned and beautiful, wearing a simple black dress. Her name tag said, Destiny Williams, scholarship recipient. "Mrs. Pemberton, I just wanted to say thank you. I aged out of foster care last year. I had no money, no family, no way to afford college. Your foundation," her voice cracked, "you gave me a chance when no one else would." I hugged her. This stranger who reminded me that good could come from wreckage, that Robert's money could change lives in ways that mattered more than buildings or bank accounts. "What are you studying?" I asked. "Social work. I want to help other kids like me, kids who need someone to believe in them." After she walked away, I stood there feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not just surviving, not just getting through each day, but actually building something meaningful, actually making a difference. It didn't erase the pain of losing Ethan and Lily, didn't make the betrayal hurt less, but it gave me a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to keep going. August brought heat and humidity, the kind that makes Chicago feel like a tropical city. I'd started therapy, finally called someone, finally admitted I needed help, processing everything that had happened. Doctor Sarah Kwan was in her 50s, calm and insightful, and she didn't let me hide behind deflection or humor. "Tell me about the guilt," she said in one session. "What guilt?" "The guilt you feel about cutting them off, about not trying harder to save them." I'd gotten good at not thinking about it, but her question cracked something open. I keep wondering if I gave up too easily, if a better mother would have found a way to reach them. A better mother than the woman who raised them for 26 years, who loved them, supported them, gave them every advantage. Maybe. I don't know. Claire, you can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't fix people who don't think they're broken. What your children did wasn't a cry for help. It was a calculated plan to steal from you. But they're still my children, and you're still their mother. Those things don't change. But being a mother doesn't mean letting your children destroy you. It means loving them enough to set boundaries, even when those boundaries are permanent. I cried in that session. Cried for the mother I'd been, who'd believed love was enough. Cried for the woman I'd become, who knew better now. Cried for all the versions of myself I'd had to kill to survive this. Dr. Kwan handed me tissues and let me cry. When I finally stopped, she said something that stuck with me. Grief isn't linear. You're going to have good days and bad days. Days when you're angry, days when you're sad, days when you feel nothing at all. That's all normal. The goal isn't to get over it. It's to learn to carry it, to integrate it into who you're becoming. And who am I becoming? I don't know. But I think you're starting to figure it out. On a Saturday in late September, I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I went through Robert's clothes. I'd left his closet untouched since he died. Couldn't bear to see it empty. But 8 months later, it was time. Time to donate his suits and shirts and shoes to people who needed them. Time to stop preserving his space like a shrine. I pulled down boxes and started sorting. Most things would go to charity, but some items I kept. His favorite sweater, the one he wore on Sunday mornings reading the paper. His Northwestern sweatshirt from his college days, the tie he'd worn to Ethan and Lily's graduation. At the back of the closet, I found a shoebox I didn't recognize. Inside were letters, dozens of them, in my handwriting. Letters I'd written to Robert when we were dating, when he'd spent a summer in Boston for an internship and we'd been separated for the first time. I sat on the bedroom floor and read them. 23-year-old Claire, writing about her days teaching piano, about missing him, about her dreams for their future. So young and so certain, so full of hope. "I can't wait to marry you," one letter said. "I can't wait to build a life together. I just know we're going to be so happy." We had been happy. For years and years we'd been happy. The fact that it ended badly didn't erase the decades of good, didn't make the love we'd shared any less real. I thought about Father Martin's words. What your children did doesn't erase who they were when they were young. The same was true for my marriage, for my life. The betrayal at the end didn't negate everything that came before. I could hold both truths at once, that I'd had a beautiful marriage, and that it had ended in grief, that I'd raised children I loved, and that they'd become people who hurt me, that life was more complicated than happy endings or tragic ones. It was both, all mixed together, and learning to live with that complexity was what it meant to be human. I put the letters back in the box, set it aside to keep. Then I finished sorting Robert's clothes, bagged them up and drove them to the donation center on Clybourne. When I got home, his closet was empty except for the few items I'd kept. It felt right. Not erased, but no longer frozen in time. Room for something new, whenever I was ready for it. October came with crisp air and changing leaves. The foundation was thriving. We'd given out 30 scholarships, funded 15 small business grants, and I was working with a team to expand into other cities. The work consumed me in the best possible way. I'd also started seeing people again. Dinner with old friends who'd given me space to grieve but were there when I was ready. Coffee with Gerald, who'd become a surprising source of support. Sunday morning mass at St. Clement's, because I discovered I did still believe in something. Maybe not all the dogma, but in grace, in mercy, in the possibility of redemption. On a Thursday afternoon, I was at the foundation office reviewing grant applications when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello, Mrs. Pemberton. This is Ashley Martinez from Northwestern Memorial. I'm calling about Lily Pemberton. She's listed you as her emergency contact." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "She was in a car accident. She's stable, but she's asking for you." For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 8 months of no contact, and now this. Lily in a hospital, asking for me. "Is she all right?" "Broken leg, some lacerations, mild concussion. She'll recover fully. But she's very upset. She keeps saying she needs to talk to you." I looked at the grant applications on my desk, at the life I'd been building, the peace I'd been finding. I thought about Mrs. Chen's story, about her mother dying and having no regrets. I thought about Dr. Kwan asking me who I was becoming, and I thought about that little girl in the construction paper cards, about the daughter I'd raised before she became someone I didn't recognize. "Tell her I'm coming," I said. Northwestern Memorial smelled like antiseptic and cafeteria food. I followed the nurse to Lily's room, my heart pounding, not knowing what I'd find or what I'd feel when I saw her. She was in bed, her left leg in a cast, bandages on her arms and forehead. She looked small and young and nothing like the calculating woman on those recordings. When she saw me, she started crying. "Mom, you came." I stood in the doorway, frozen. Part of me wanted to rush to her bedside. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. "The nurse said you were in an accident. I ran a red light, wasn't paying attention. Someone hit my passenger side." She wiped her eyes. "I've been having a really hard time, Mom, since everything happened. Since you got caught stealing from your father, you mean?" She flinched. I know what we did was wrong. I think about it every day." "Do you?" I moved into the room but didn't sit. "Or do you just think about getting caught?" "Both. All of it." She looked at me with those green eyes. My eyes. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. Real pain. Real remorse. Or maybe just real consequences catching up with her. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I was angry at Dad for always working, for never having time for us. I felt like he loved his buildings more than he loved us. And when Ethan suggested we could take control of the money, use it for things that actually mattered, it seemed like justice. Justice. I know how that sounds. I know it was wrong. But in my head, I'd convinced myself we were doing the right thing, that we deserved it after being ignored our whole lives. I thought about that. About how Robert had worked long hours, had missed some soccer games and school plays. About how I'd made excuses for him, told the twins he was building their future. "Your father loved you," I said quietly. "He worked hard so you'd have opportunities, so you could go to Harvard and travel and never worry about money. That wasn't neglect. That was love. I know that now, but I didn't then. Or maybe I did and I just wanted to be angry." She was crying harder now. "I've lost everything, Mom. My job found out about the legal stuff. I had to move out of my apartment because I couldn't afford it. Ethan won't talk to me. He blames me for getting us caught. I'm alone and I'm scared and I don't know what to do." This was the moment. The choice I'd been avoiding for 8 months. I could walk out right now. Could tell her that consequences have actions. That she'd made her bed and now had to lie in it. Could maintain the boundary I'd set and protect the peace I'd found. Or I could choose something different. I pulled up the chair beside her bed and sat down. "I'm not going to give you money," I said. "I'm not going to fix your life or make this easier. What you did was unforgivable, Lily. You tried to destroy your father's legacy and steal from me. You manipulated people and forged documents and showed no remorse until you were caught." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "But," I continued and watched her look up with desperate hope, "you're still my daughter. And if you really want to change, if you really want to do the work to become someone different, I'm willing to be part of that. Not the way we were before. That relationship is dead. But maybe we can build something new, something honest." "You mean it?" "I mean, I'm willing to try. But Lily, if you betray me again, if you take advantage of this second chance, I'm done. Permanently. No more chances. Do you understand?" Yes, I understand. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." I stayed with her for an hour. Didn't hold her hand, didn't offer false comfort, but I was there. When I left, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. The possibility that people could change, that redemption was real, even when it seemed impossible. In the hospital parking lot, I called Dr. Kwan. "I saw Lily today," I said when she answered. "How did that go?" "I don't know yet. I told her I'd give her a chance, to prove she's changed." "How do you feel about that?" I thought about it. About the risk I was taking, the vulnerability I was choosing. Scared, but also hopeful? Is that stupid? No, that's human. The next months were slow and careful. Lily and I started meeting for coffee once a week. Neutral territory, time-limited, structured. She'd gotten a job as a hostess at a restaurant, was seeing a therapist, was slowly rebuilding her life. She asked about Ethan once. Have you heard from him? No, have you? She shook her head. I tried calling a few times. He never answered. I think he's angrier than I was. More convinced he was right. Maybe he'll come around eventually. Maybe. I hope so. I miss him. She looked at me. Do you miss us? How we used to be? Every day, I said honestly. But we can't go back to that. We can only go forward. It wasn't easy. Some weeks I'd leave our coffee meetings angry and frustrated, convinced I was making a mistake. Other weeks I'd see glimpses of the daughter I'd raised. The good person I knew was still in there somewhere. Dr. Kwan helped me navigate it, helped me set boundaries while remaining open, helped me understand that reconciliation didn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It meant acknowledging the harm and choosing connection anyway, in whatever limited form that could take. By December, a year after Robert died, Lily and I had established something new. Not mother and daughter in the way we'd been, but two adults trying to build trust from scratch. It was fragile and imperfect and sometimes painful, but it was real. On Christmas Eve, I went to midnight mass at St. Clement's. The church was packed, the air thick with incense and the sound of carols. I sat in my usual pew and let the familiar rituals wash over me. Father Martin's homily was about hope, about how the Christmas story was fundamentally about God entering into human brokenness, about light coming into darkness, about the possibility of redemption even in the most impossible circumstances. We all carry wounds, he said. We've all been broken by life, by choices, ours and others. But the promise of Christmas is that brokenness isn't the end of the story, that even in our deepest darkness, light can break through, that nothing is beyond the reach of grace. I thought about the year I'd survived, the losses and betrayals, the choices I'd made to protect myself while remaining open to the possibility of healing, the foundation I'd built, and the lives it was changing, the fragile new relationship with Lily, the empty space where Ethan should be. It had been the hardest year of my life, harder than any year I could have imagined when I'd stood at Robert's funeral 12 months ago. But I'd survived it. More than survived. I'd grown. I'd learned things about myself I never would have discovered otherwise. I'd found strength I didn't know I had. I'd learned that love could coexist with boundaries, that forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation, that you could hold hope and heartbreak in the same hand. After Mass, I lit a candle. One for Robert, for the man who'd loved me and protected me even in death. One for the children I'd raised, hoping Ethan might find his way back someday. One for myself, for the woman I'd become. Then I went home to the house that was finally mine, filled with memories that no longer haunted me, but informed who I was becoming. On New Year's Day, I did something I'd been planning for months. I called a realtor. The house was beautiful, but it was full of ghosts. Robert's study where I'd found his letter, the dining room where I'd confronted the twins, the bedroom where I'd read those devastating recordings. I didn't want to live in a museum of my own suffering anymore. I found a condo in Streeterville, all windows and light, overlooking the lake, modern and clean, and entirely mine. No history, no ghosts, just possibility. It took 2 months to sell the house and move. I kept the furniture I loved, donated the rest, kept the photographs I wanted, the good memories, the beautiful moments, and left behind the rooms where those moments had occurred. On moving day, I did one final walk-through of the empty house, stood in each room and said goodbye. To the life I'd lived here, to the woman I'd been, to the family we'd almost been. In Robert's study, I picked up the small statue of St. Joseph. It was the only thing left, sitting on the empty bookshelf. I wrapped it carefully and put it in my bag. A reminder that faith wasn't about certainty or easy answers. It was about walking forward even when you couldn't see the path clearly. At the new condo, I unpacked slowly, thoughtfully, each item placed with intention. I set up an office for the foundation work, created a guest room for when Lily might visit, left space for possibility for whatever came next. The statue of St. Joseph went on a shelf in my living room, visible from my reading chair. I looked at it often in those first weeks, finding comfort in its quiet presence. Spring came again. My second spring without Robert. My first spring in the new condo. I'd planted a small garden on my balcony, herbs and flowers in pots. Nothing like the sprawling garden I'd left behind, but mine nonetheless. The foundation was expanding faster than I'd anticipated. We'd helped over 100 young people in the past year. Some had gone to college. Some had started businesses. All of them had gotten a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. I'd hired a director to run day-to-day operations, giving myself more flexibility. I was thinking about writing a book about starting over after loss, maybe traveling. There were places Robert and I had always talked about, visiting but never made time for. Lily and I still met for coffee every week. We'd graduated to occasional dinners. She'd gotten a promotion at the restaurant, was saving money, was considering going back to school. We didn't talk about Ethan much. The wound was still too fresh for her, the absence too painful for me. One Saturday in April, we were having coffee at a place on Michigan Avenue when she said, "I want to tell you something." I braced myself, old instincts kicking in. Okay, I've been saving money. Not for anything specific, just saving. And I want you to know that whatever I take from the foundation someday, if I ever do, I'm going to pay back. With interest. I don't expect you to believe me, but I'm putting it in writing. I'm making it official. Lily, you don't have access to the foundation. I know, but maybe someday you'll trust me enough to give me some role, to let me help. She looked at me earnestly. And if that day comes, I want you to know. I'll earn it. I'll prove I've changed. I studied her. This young woman who'd hurt me so deeply, who was working so hard to become someone different. I didn't know if she'd succeed. Didn't know if I'd ever trust her completely. But I knew she was trying, and that had to count for something. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. We finished our coffee and I watched her walk away, heading to her shift at the restaurant. She moved with more confidence now, more purpose. Maybe she really was changing. Maybe people could become different than who they'd been. Or maybe I just needed to believe that was possible. In May, on what would have been Robert's 60th birthday, I went to Graceland Cemetery. I hadn't been back since the funeral. Hadn't wanted to face that headstone, that permanent reminder of loss. But a year and a half later, I was ready. His grave was well maintained, the grass green and trimmed. Someone, probably Gerald, had left flowers at some point. I stood there with my own flowers, white roses that Robert had loved, and felt surprisingly calm. I did it, I told him. I protected everything you built. I'm using it for good. I think you'd be proud. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang. Lily's trying, I continued. Really trying, Ethan. I don't know about Ethan, but I'm okay with not knowing. I'm okay with the uncertainty. I placed the roses at the base of the headstone. I miss you. I'll always miss you. But I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I'm building a life I never expected to have. It's different than what we planned, but it's good. It's mine. I stood there for a few more minutes, then kissed my fingers and pressed them to his name carved in granite. Thank you for the letter, I said softly. Thank you for giving me the choice. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter, not healed. Maybe you never fully heal from something like this, but whole in a different way. Whole because I'd survived the breaking and rebuilt myself into someone stronger, wiser, more complete. Summer arrived with its usual Chicago intensity, heat and festivals and the city alive with energy. I'd started dating, casually. Nothing serious, just coffee with a man named Daniel who taught history at DePaul. Dinners with James who ran a non-profit similar to mine. relearning how to be someone other than a wife, a mother, a widow. It felt strange and exciting, and sometimes terrifying, but good. Growing pains, Dr. Kwan called them. The discomfort of becoming. One evening in July, I was on my balcony watching the sunset over the lake when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Spam calls were constant. But something made me pick up. Hello. Silence. Then, Mom? My heart stopped. I knew that voice, even though I hadn't heard it in 18 months. Ethan. Yeah, hi. He sounded uncertain, younger than his 30 years. I don't know why I'm calling. Where are you? Seattle. I moved out here last year. Fresh start, you know. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if I was angry or relieved or scared. Maybe all three. How did you get my number? It's new. I called Lily. She gave it to me. She said you've been meeting with her. That you're trying to rebuild. We are. Slowly. More silence. I could hear him breathing. Could imagine him. Pacing. Working up courage. I wanted to say I'm sorry, he finally said. For everything. For what I did. For what I planned. For betraying you and Dad. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? The question hung between us. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Both, if I'm honest. At first, just sorry we got caught. But I've been in therapy out here, and I'm starting to understand how fucked up it all was. What we were willing to do. What I was willing to do. What made you call now? I don't know. I've been thinking about Dad's birthday. About how he'd be 60. About how I never got to apologize to him. His voice cracked. And I realized that if I didn't call you, if I didn't at least try, I'd regret it forever. I looked out at the lake, at the sun setting in brilliant oranges and pinks. Thought about all the choices I'd made over the past 18 months. The boundaries I'd set. The grace I'd extended to Lily. The space I'd left for possibility. I'm not ready to see you, I said. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. I understand. But I'm willing to talk. Like this. On the phone. Once a month, maybe. See if we can start there. I heard him breathe out. Relief evident. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me yet. You have a lot to prove, Ethan. A lot of work to do. And I'm not making any promises about where this goes. I know. We talked for a few more minutes. Surface things, safe topics. His job in Seattle. The foundation. How beautiful the Pacific Northwest was. When we hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, processing. I didn't know if Ethan really had changed, if his apology was real or just another manipulation. I didn't know if I could ever trust him again, if we could ever rebuild anything resembling a relationship. But I knew that leaving the door open, even just a crack, was the right choice for me. Not for him, for me. Because closing it completely would mean living with bitterness and anger. And I'd worked too hard to build a life without those poisons. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't a moment. It was a process. A choice you made over and over, day after day. Sometimes you made it willingly. Sometimes you made it grudgingly. But you made it because the alternative, carrying hatred until it consumed you, was worse than the risk of being hurt again. On the second anniversary of Robert's death, I woke up and didn't feel the crushing weight I'd expected. I missed him. Yes, would always miss him. But the missing had transformed into something gentler, something I could carry without being crushed by it. I spent the morning at the foundation office, the afternoon at a gallery opening with friends, the evening on my balcony with a glass of wine and a good book. A full life, a rich life. A life that was entirely mine. That night, before bed, I stood in front of the St. Joseph statue, on my living room shelf. I thought about everything I'd survived, everything I'd learned, about Robert's final gift. Not just the evidence or the money, but the choice, the power to decide who I would become in the aftermath of betrayal. I'd chosen to survive, to build, to forgive, in my own time and on my own terms, to remain open to possibility, even when every instinct screamed to close myself off completely. I'd chosen to believe that people could change, some people anyway, that redemption was possible, that grace was real, even in the darkest moments. I'd chosen to trust that I was strong enough to handle whatever came next, strong enough to set boundaries and extend mercy, strong enough to hold both hurt and hope. "Thank you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to the statue, to God, to Robert, or to myself. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe gratitude itself was enough. I turned off the lights and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd wake up and do it all again. Build the foundation, meet with Lily, maybe talk to Ethan again. Live the life I'd created from the ruins of the life I'd lost. It wasn't the life I'd imagined 2 years ago. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. And it was good, and that was enough. Outside, the city sparkled with lights. Inside, I slept peacefully, dreamless and whole. The letter had shattered everything I thought I knew. But in the end, it had also saved me from living in lies, saved me from people who would have destroyed me, saved me from a life that looked beautiful on the surface but was rotten underneath. Robert had given me the truth, even though it was painful, even though it cost me everything I thought I had. And in losing everything, I'd found myself. That was the real gift, the real inheritance, not the money, or the evidence, or even the protection, but the chance to become who I was, always meant to be. And I was still becoming, still growing, still choosing every day who I wanted to be. The story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be, but I was finally ready to write the next chapter. Whatever it held, I'd face it with open eyes and an open heart. Scarred, yes, but unbroken. Stronger than before, free. A week after my husband's death, the lawyer called. Your husband left a letter to be opened, only after his death. I rushed there, but when I read it, I discovered my children weren't who they said they were.